Hello guys, today I'll be teaching you something about the bone pathology. We'll start with the introduction. So what is the basic structure of a bone? Let me draw a bone. So a bone consists of two parts, the cortex and the medulla. This is known as the center of the shaft is known as the medullary cavity. This is known as the medullary cavity. And this consists of something we all know which is known as the bone marrow. So we have the medullary cavity in the center of the bone, and this area which shows red zigzag lines, it actually makes up the cortex of the bone. The cortex of the bone. Okay, so the bone, the long bone has three parts. The main shaft of the long bone is made up of is known as diaphysis. This is known as diaphysis, and the ends are known as epiphysis. The epiphysis. So between the diaphysis and the epiphysis, we have a very special area which is known as the metaphysis. And the special thing about this area is it consists of area. It consists of the epiphyseal plate. It consists of the epiphyseal plate, which is responsible for the elongation of the bone, the vertical and the horizontal with the vertical elongation. Mostly the vertical elongation of the bone is 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 important due to the presence of the epiphyseal plate, and which is present in the metaphysis. So this is the basic structure of the bone. So now coming to starting with the bone pathology. Okay, so your normal bone, and any normal bone, consists of two parts. One is the organic component and one is the inorganic component. I'll zoom it a little bit. Okay, the organic component uh, is known as the osteoid of the matrix, and it makes up of about 35% of the matrix. The organic component is known as osteoid, and it makes up about 35% of the matrix. Okay, so what is so special about this osteoid? The all the cells which are present in the osteoid, all of these cells, all of the different things which are present in the osteoid, like we have the type 1 collagen, which is mostly what makes up the osteoid. We also have some calcium binding proteins like osteonectin and bone xyloprotein. We have cell adhesion proteins, osteopontin, fibronectin and thrombospondin, and cytokines like IL-1, IL-6 and RANK-L. What is this RANK-L? RANK-L means it's a rank ligand, and we'll come to its function when we are talking about how osteoclasts, the bone-eating cells, are activated. We also have some enzymes like collagenase and alkaline phosphatase. The enzyme alkaline phosphatase is a very important diagnostic marker in many diseases. We also have some growth factors like IGF-1, TGF beta, and platelet-derived growth factors. And we have some proteins involved in mineralization like osteocalcin. So what is mineralization? It is that bone is a storage house of calcium and phosphorus, and in this process of mineralization, the bone uh, this hydroxyapatite is formed, which consists of calcium and phosphorus. So we'll come to that, what actually is bone mineralization. It also contains some proteins which are concentrated from the serum like albumin and beta 2 microglobulin. Okay, so what is special about these? The thing that I've marked. These are all derived from osteoblast. Okay. So coming to one unique entity out of these, osteopontin. It is also known as osteocalcin, and this is a marker which is unique to bone. It serves as a marker which is very sensitive and specific for osteoblast activity in the serum. So you can check. So if the osteoblastic activity is very high, like the bone is under proliferative environment, so your serum osteopontin will be high. It's a very sensitive and specific marker. So So 35% of the matrix is made up of the organic component, and the remaining 65%, which is responsible for the hardness, is made up of hydroxyapatite, which has this formula. It's easy to appreciate that it has calcium and phosphorus both. So this hardness or this inorganic component is actually it comes under the process of mineralization of bone. 99% of the body's calcium is actually stored in the bone, and 85% of the body's phosphorus is also stored under the bones. Okay, so we have talked about the matrix. Now we'll talk about some of the cells. So we have three types of cells which are present inside a bone. First are the osteoblasts, then we have the osteocytes, and then we have the osteoclasts. So osteoblasts, these are present on the surface of the matrix. So it's easy to appreciate that these cells are your osteoblasts. Okay, you can see the matrix along the sides. These cells are your osteoblasts. The main function is it synthesizes and transports and maintains the matrix of the bone. We have discussed that osteoblasts actually secrete all of these things, including type 1 collagen, osteonectin, osteopontin, etc. So the osteoblasts have a main function of synthesizing, transporting and maintaining of the matrix. So these osteoblasts with time become some of them every time during bone remodeling and other processes, these become inactive and become osteocytes, which are embedded within the matrix. Please remember that osteoblasts are present on the surface of the matrix, but osteocytes are embedded within the matrix. Now coming to osteocytes. Two osteocytes are connected to each other by cytoplasmic dendritic processes, which are known as canaliculi. These are known as canaliculi. The cytoplasmic dendritic processes which connect two adjacent osteocytes are known as canaliculi. And what is the function of the osteocytes? It controls calcium and phosphate levels, which is one thing we'll explain this later. And the other is mechanotransduction. This word mechanotransduction is important. So what happens? The osteocytes detect mechanical forces, and then it leads to translation into biological activity. So this is the function of the osteocytes. Now coming to the most important cells in the bone, these are the osteoclasts. So it is a multinucleate giant cell, but please remember that it is a physiological giant cell, not a pathological giant cell, which is very obvious. I'll just show you one of the osteoclasts. You can see it's a giant cell. And it is multinucleate. In some conditions, it can even have up to 10 to 12 nuclei, and in other conditions, up to 100 nuclei may also be present. I'll come to the conditions later. So how does an osteoclast, we know that osteoclast is a bone eating cell, so how does it actually eat the bone? So what happens, the osteoclast on its surface has processes known as integrins. These integrins attach to the surface, and they form a resorption pit. And in this resorption pit, the osteoclasts release matrix metalloproteinases. They release lysozymes, mainly consisting of neutral metalloproteinases, which actually eat up the bone and which lead to calcium and phosphorus resorption, from forming a physiology ring. This process is due to the release of PTH hormone. So PTH actually leads to osteoclast activation, more of the osteoclast activation, so that we can control the level of serum calcium, and we can lose more phosphorus in the urine. Okay, so there are two patterns of bones which are present in our body. One is the woven pattern of bone, and one is the lamellar pattern of bone. Okay, so you can see the woven pattern. It is very much disorganized as compared to the lab. This is the woven pattern and this is the lamellar pattern. The woven pattern is very much disorganized as compared to the lamellar pattern, and also you can appreciate a lot of cellularity in this, a lot of cellularity as compared to the lamellar pattern. So when is the woven bone formed and when is the lamellar bone formed? So woven bone are formed during rapid bone growth, example in the fetal life, and during fracture repair. During fracture repair, and a lamellar bone consists of parallel collagen fibers, so it has more strength as compared to a woven bone. Okay, then okay, so now we'll move towards what actually how the bone is formed, what is the development of the bone. Okay, so development of the bone. So during embryogenesis, most bones develop from a cartilage mold, which is known as analgon. Analgon. Analgon, a process of endochondral ossification. So during embryogenesis, most bones develop from a cartilage mold, which is known as analgon, by the process of endochondral ossification. Endochondral ossification is the key word here, and this word analgon. These two are the key words. So what happens? We have the mesenchymal precursor cells in that area. We have the mesenchymal precursor cells in that area, which lead to formation of the cartilage mold, which is known as analgon. So what happens during the 8th week? During the 8th week of the gestation, two types of cells are activated or formed. Two types of cells are formed. One is the chondroclast. This is not an osteoclast, I'm talking about a chondroclast, because please remember, we have a cartilage which will eventually be formed into a bone. So to convert the cartilage into the bone, we have to first eat up the cartilage, and we also have to form the bone. So for eating up the cartilage, we will use a chondroclast, and for making the bone, we will use an osteoblast. So I remembered by this way. You can also, so by using by this cell chondroclast, it removes the central portion, and which will lead to the formation of the medullary canal. In the beginning, I showed you the basic structure of the bone, and you must remember that this red area is actually your medullary cavity, which will in future have host the bone marrow. Now, the osteoblasts in the mid shaft, also known as diaphysis, these will lead to the formation of the cortex. So the medullary cavity, the canal, is formed by the chondroclast, that is the cartilage eating cells, and the osteoblast in the mid shaft, or also known as the diaphysis, will lead to cortex deposition. So these due to these areas, there will be a primary center of ossification formation, and as these two processes, that is the medullary canal formation and the cortex deposition, are occurring simultaneously, it will induce a radial growth along the shaft of the bone. So along the primary center of ossification, what kind of growth takes place? It's a radial growth. So what is happening around the epiphysis? In epiphysis, we have an endochondral ossification in a radial fashion. And it is actually a centrifugal. Fashion, because the epiphysis is actually imagined in a two-dimensional way, and this diaphysis is imagined in a three-dimensional way. So the book uses the word centrifugal, but it's actually a radial fashion growth only. So this will lead to formation of secondary ossification centers. So the primary ossification center is formed somewhere here, and the secondary ossification centers are formed along the epiphysis. So you can see that now two types of ossification centers are formed. One is the primary and one is the secondary, and between one primary and one secondary, we have an Annel's plate where no growth was taking place, and this will now lead to growth of the bone, and this is known as the growth plate. This is known as the growth plate, and here your chondrocytes will come into action. your chondrocytes will come into action, and these will proliferate, these will be hypertrophied, and eventually lead to apoptosis. So repeating it, so in the diaphysis we have two types of cells. We have the chondroclast and the osteoblast. Chondroclast form the medullary cavity, the medullary canal, and the osteoblasts are forming the cortex. And in the epiphysis we have endochondral ossification happening there also in a centrifugal fashion, which will lead to formation of two secondary ossification centers, and the annulus plate between the centers of 1 and 2 will form what is known as the growth plate. And growth plate will consist of the third type of cells, which are known as the chondrocytes, which will proliferate, which will hypertrophy, and which will eventually be apoptotized. And at the region of apoptosis, there will be capillary formation in this region, which will supply the osteoblast. So these capillaries will be formed in the region where apoptosis or chondrocytes is taking place after proliferation and hypertrophy, and these will provide nutrients to the osteoblast, and it will lead to the formation of the osteoid. So the osteoid, which consists of what we have learned before, that is collagen type 1 and the thrombospondin and fibronectin, etc., IL-1, IL-6, it is all formed by the osteoblast. So this is regarding the development of the bone. So this type of development, which is due to endochondral ossification in an annulus, it usually occurs in long bones. Now what happens in flat bones? Usually in flat bones, there is intramembranous ossification. For example, flat bones, what flat bones do we have? We have cranium, we have the sternum, etc. So here intramembranous ossification takes place, and there is no cartilage annulus involvement, and only osteoblasts are required. So at the end of the day, in flat bones, only osteoblasts are required, and which will lead to formation of the osteoid. No cartilage annulus is required in the formation of bones like cranium and sternum, etc. So this development of bone is controlled by systemic and local factors. I have written a lot of systemic and local factors, but most of them you already know, and it's not necessary to memorize each and every one of them, because these will come under pathogenesis of most of the disease we will be discussing later. So some of the important ones are, first we have the growth hormone. But before coming to this development of bone, I'd like to show you the picture of what happens actually in the growth plate. So this is an active growth plate. We learned that the cells, the chondrocytes, they go under proliferation, they go under hypertrophy, and they form at the end they apoptosize. So this is what the image was given in the book. So first we have a reserve zone, then we have the zone of proliferation of the chondrocytes. This zone is the zone of hypertrophy, you can see the increase. Then we have the zone of mineralization. What does mineralization mean? It means calcium and phosphorus deposition forming of hydroxyapatite. And at the end, this word is very important, this is a primary spongiosa. And this actually acts as a base. It is a remnant cartilage which acts as a base, which will lead to formation of more bony material over it. So primary spongiosa is actually a remnant of cartilage over which new bone will be formed. So this is the primary spongiosa. Now coming to the factors. Okay, so what is the role of growth hormone? It will act on the resting chondrocytes, the resting ones, which was seen in the zone 1, the resting chondrocytes, and it will lead to increase in proliferation of them. So coming to the T3 hormone is secreted by the thyroid, and in the endocrine chapter we have learned that the thyroid hormone is responsible for the bone formation, and also for various other stuff like basal metabolism, controlling the BMR, etc. So in conditions where thyroid is in decrease, the thyroid is decreased, so like for example cretinism, So the bones will not be formed properly and it will lead to a short stature of a cretin. So T3 is very important for and it acts on the proliferating chondrocytes, and it will also increase the proliferation. Growth hormone acts on the resting chondrocytes and T3 acts on the proliferating chondrocytes. Now there is one more hormone which is known as the Indian hedgehog hormone. Okay, so it will lead to chondrocyte proliferation and differentiation, plus it will also lead to osteoblast proliferation. So it will act on both chondrocytes and the osteoblasts. We have the parathyroid related peptide which helps in maintenance of proliferation. You don't have to memorize each and everybody what where they are acting or what is their role. You just have to know the names. This WNT, this WNT signaling pathway is very important for the activity of osteoblasts. And this actually binds to the frizzled or the LRP5 or LRP6 receptor, and it activates the beta catenin pathway, which is responsible for proliferation and maturation of actually the cells of the bone. So this signaling pathway, the WNT pathway, is very much responsible. WNT beta catenin pathway is very much responsible for the osteoblastic activity. So in future videos you will see in some diseases the WNT pathway is actually there are actually mutations in it which will lead to either more bone proliferation or less bone proliferation. Now we have other genes also, the SOX9 and the RUNX2, which are the SOX9 acts on the different precursor. It actually helps in the differentiation of precursor into chondrocytes. So this is a unique gene. It actually acts on the precursor of the chondrocyte, and the RUNX2 is for the differentiation of osteoblast and chondrocytes. Now the last two are the very important factors. First we have the fibroblast growth FGF. We have the FGF and fibroblast growth factor, basically the FGF3, and what it does, it inhibits the proliferation and promotes differentiation. So why am I stressing on this FGF3? Because this receptor, the FGF3 receptor, it is actually stimulated for a long while, for like a chronic stimulation of the FGF3 receptor in condition like achondroplasia leads to decreased proliferation and decreased proliferation of bone, and due to this the achondroplasic patients are actually dwarf patients. It also has a role in thanatotropic dwarfism. And also there is bone morphogenic protein BMP, which comes under the TGF beta family, and it is responsible for the hypertrophy and proliferation. This is very important, like just like the WNT signaling pathway which activates beta catenin, the BMP also activates the active osteoblasts. So this was all regarding the introduction of bone pathology.